On an island in the sun, there sits a huge pyramid. The TARDIS arrives in stealth mode. Inside, Ian asks about radiation, while Barbara gently ribs the Doctor about not having one of those new and futuristic colour televisions she's heard about back home.
Maybe you don't have colour television.
The Doctor tries to befuddle her by using a French term.
Oh, but I have.
Where is it then?
Well, at the moment it's temporarily hors de combat.
The TARDIS doesn't even bother to translate. She knows Barbara has a good grasp of the language. Susan is very keen to get outside and enjoy the beach. A still cautious Ian, disappointed that they're not at Southend because he wanted to enjoy the full length of the pleasure pier there, thinks he saw something move on the scanner, but the crappy black and white image makes him unsure. Outside, 4 torpedo-shaped objects make their way towards the beach. 3 of them manage to arrive smoothly, but the 4th belatedly limps its way to the shore. The travellers leave the TARDIS and start to explore the beach. As they make their way through some spiky rockwork, someone in a wetsuit watches them go. The Doctor finds a chunk of glass on the beach, which leads him and Ian to the conclusion that all the beach is glass. It's a bit of a leap, although as sand is an ingredient in making glass, I suppose they're not technically wrong. Ignoring her grandfather's warning, like any good teenager, Susan is determined to have a paddle in a pool, but Barbara bumps into her as she's taking her shoe off. Ian, displaying his ability to pause until the perfect dramatic moment again, waits until she's about to put her foot in before warning her that the water has dissolved her shoe.
He's going to come in? No. Now we go.
No, Susan, don't!
Which looks surprisingly like it's being carried away by an army of ants. Or, as they're in a liquid, should that be a navy of ants? Chivalrous Ian gives Susan his boot so she doesn't cut her feet on the glass sand. As she has to pour out sand that's already in them, and he's happy to walk around, his socks must be made of asbestos. Unlike Ian, who gets all smug when he points out something historical, Barbara is concerned about her observation when doing Ian's science work, figuring out that as the pool is tidal, the whole sea must be acid. At the TARDIS, Wetsuit Man rather rudely and crudely paws at her lock. He soon scarpers as Susan arrives. The Doctor, having previously failed to bamboozle Barbara, tries again with Ian, this time muddling pronouns as well as a basic English sentence.
Yes, and if you'd had your shoes on, my boy, you could have lent her hers. You must...
The Doctor, Ian and Barbara find 3 of the glass torpedoes. Barbara wisely goes to explore on her own, as the Doctor suggests taking tops off. She finds the 4th submersible with something inside it. A freshly shod Susan leaves the TARDIS and sees creepy footprints in the glass sand. She wanders off, leaving Ian's boots behind as what appears to be a Morosian post-watershed version of a Teletubby, a Rubber Dubby, moves out of hiding. At the sub, Ian yanks the end off and pulls out what appears to be an empty wetsuit. Barbara sees a tear in the suit and deduces the acid must have gone in. Ian is distracted by the huge pyramid in the middle of the island. They decide to go and get Susan from the TARDIS before going to have an explore. They walk away, leaving the occupant of the wetsuit to slop out onto the ground. Unbeknownst to the others, Susan is already at the building. Unbeknownst to her, Fufar is waiting around the corner with a drawn knife. At the TARDIS, Ian retrieves his boot before heading off to the building with the others to look for Susan. As Fufar lies in wait for Susan, a ghost spins the wall around and he falls into the building. Arriving at the building, Ian and Barbara nerd out about the construction of the pyramid. The Doctor soon puts a stop to that by insisting they look for Susan. They decide to split up and each walk around the building, meeting up on the opposite side. Ian and Barbara go together so they can keep talking about mortarless construction and the precise distribution of weights. Whoa. Of course, Susan manages to fall through a wall, her screams alerting Ian and Barbara. The Doctor also manages to fall through a wall. Must be a Gallifreyan blind spot. It might look like Ian's foot, but it can't be, as Ian and Barbara are around the other side of the pyramid. Inside the pyramid, Susan is in some sort of scare maze. First she's spooked by a creepy monk, and then grabbed by Fufar. It's bad form that. They usually tell you if the actors in these things are going to touch you. Anyway, he's stabbed in the back for his trouble. And Susan is approached by the monk. Outside the pyramid, Ian and Barbara finally fall through the walls. The monk has sacked the ghost and is operating them himself now. In the scare maze, Ian comes across the body of Fufar. We might find that disrespectful, but it's probably what he would have wanted. He's baffled by the solid nature of his corpse. In a prison cell, Susan tells the Doctor and Barbara about her ordeals. He remains optimistic about Ian rescuing them, until Barbara tells him he fell into the building before her. The look on the doctor's face is priceless. In the scare maze, the monk and another rubby-dubby, this one called Priapisme, are having a scrap. Ian helps out and pushes Priapisme into a wall, which apparently flattens them before dropping them down a well into the acid below. Ian asks the old monk if he's a prisoner. He babbles about being a prisoner, yet being at home, and calls the rubby-dubbies Vord. As he presents this like a confused grandparent who can't distinguish between the legitimate toy you wanted for Christmas and the knockoff from the market, I'm not going to take his Vord for it. Later on, the old man, Arbitan, is showing off the centrepiece of the pyramid to the now released travellers. He explains that the machine started as a simple judicial machine, but over time it was enhanced to the point it could manipulate the minds of men across the planet, removing from them any urge for evil. I'm assuming none of the women in Marinus were in need of such suppression. He goes on to explain that the Vord are led by one named Yartek, and he was able to regain his free will and has orchestrated the assaults on the pyramid to gain control of the machine. Surprisingly, none of the travellers rail against the liberty-busting use of a mass brainwashing machine. Arbitan goes on to explain that there are 5 keys needed to reactivate the machine. He's kept one and hidden the others across the planet. He's also adjusted the machine to make it more powerful and irresistible. He then goes on to tell them that all of his friends, colleagues and family have gone to retrieve the keys and not returned. Perhaps those imagined footsteps he goes on about are actually that ghost foot from earlier. All of this is very suspicious and doesn't at all sound like he's just murdered people and is now trying to hide it. Ah, that explains it. Back on the beach, the travellers are heading back to the TARDIS. Ian and Barbara feel bad about abandoning Arbitan, but the Doctor was clearly just appeasing him until they could get the hell out of there. The completely trustworthy Arbitan places a force field around the TARDIS. Barbara, not believing Ian when he exclaims about an invisible barrier, has to check herself.
Some sort of invisible barrier.
It's like an invisible wall.
Arbitan forces them to agree to go and find the keys. What a guy! After showing them a map of key locations, a now charm personified Arbitan gives each traveller a wrist device that will transport them to each destination. Given what we've seen of his character, I'll bet some poor time agent materialised there, probably to stop his monstrous mind control experiments, fell into a well trap after falling through a wall, and Arbitan took and clumsily duplicated their wrist mounted vortex manipulator and claimed it as his own invention. No wonder the Doctor will go on to think of them as cheap and nasty devices. He'll be lucky not to be turned inside out, upside down and aged backwards and forwards all at the same time with this thing. Barbara, keen to get out of there, activates her device. The others quickly follow, leaving Arbitan alone to creepily caress his terrifying machine. A rubby-dubby. Look, I still don't trust Arbitan. Vord is probably some sort of kink-shaming slur against their community. Approaches stealthily and stabs him in the back. I don't blame them. The Doctor, Ian and Susan materialise in front of an exciting metal wall. Ian finds Barbara's travel dial, with blood on it.